Hey, good evening. Maybe. All right. So working? Okay. Hey, good evening. We're going to get started. First, welcome. This is kind of it's fun to see everyone. I was telling a few people I've had like FOMO because I've missed like the last three events. My daughter, her high school team finished third in state basketball. So like I missed the exchanges and I missed the wealth management symposium. So feels like it's been forever since I've seen you all, even though World Series was only like 60 days ago. You know, it seems like a lot longer than that. So excited to have you all in here. It'll be a fun few days. So I just want to welcome tonight. We're going to jump right in because we have quite a bit to cover. I do have to give Dave the disclosure that somehow he hurt himself in the hotel today, rolled his ankle, so he might be limping around a little bit up here. So he's going to be a little lower energy than usual, right? But tonight, really what we want to do, and we've done this event a lot over the last few years with David. I'll talk a little bit more tomorrow morning about just the whole lineup that we have for the next day and a half together. But said this a lot. I think taxes is going to be a big deal this year. Like you're already seeing it in the news. I posted an article to the Facebook group just this week talking about some of the cuts that they're proposing or some of the taxes that they're proposing. So it's going to be a huge topic that's going to be in the news a lot. I think it's a great opportunity for the business side of it. So what we're going to do tonight, because it's been super popular, we didn't do it at the first one, and then after that we've done it at every one, is David is actually going to come up and give you his seminar. So he's going to treat you like a live seminar audience. You're going to see exactly the heavy tax focused seminar that he does for all of his prospecting up in Omaha. So you're going to get a chance to see that live. So when he gets up here, it's going to be, pretty close to quickly flipping into just real seminar mode. So pay attention, take notes. You'll take some content away from this and add it into what you're doing for sure. So I think that's all I have to say, right? Pretty much. So tonight's pretty easy. What we are going to do, though, I'll introduce Chip, who is kind of a right-hand support person for David at his office, has a very distinguished career, is well-known in the Omaha market. My lesson for all of you is like get a Chip in your office. Like it makes a big difference. So, but he does all the introductions at David's seminar. So we're going to kind of flip into real mode. I think you're going to do something real quick with him, and then we'll flip into real mode. So you're going to see a seminar. Be ready, take notes, and welcome Chip and David to the stage.
Thanks.
So if you guys would do me a real big favor, I'm here with you instead of with my dad. He's turning 82 today. So I just want you guys to say happy birthday, Lou, if you would do me a favor, all right? So, hey, Dad, you got some friends that would like to wish you a happy birthday, guys?
Happy birthday, Lou!
Happy 82nd, Dad. Love you. Thank you so much. Chip's going to explain some stuff, and then we'll just go right into live mode.
You've got to be alert. You've got to be nimble when you're working with David Brooks. You never know what might happen for sure, but that makes it fun. The great ones play hurt. Low energy, I don't think that's possible with David Brooks. We are going to show you the seminar that we do in Omaha, our tax planning presentation. I'm just going to make a few remarks about how and why we do it. It's a lot of work. We staff these events with at least 3 staff people. You got a marketing person there kind of checking people in and running it. There's a financial advisor who is greeting and seating people, and then there's another staff member, could be marketing, client service. Everybody takes a few turns during the year helping to staff these events. We've got some setup and takedown, and then you've got the introducer, and then you've got David or whichever advisor is making the actual presentation. So actually it's at least 5 people working these. They're usually evening events, so it's above and beyond the regular workday. And you got to prepare for it. That includes David. He periodically goes through scrutiny on his presentation. So it does take a lot of work. But I remember David saying to me, eyes just burning right through me, my first month or so on the job, saying, "This is how I build my business." We do radio, we do television, we're on YouTube, we send out mailers, but it's all designed to drive people to this event. This is the main way we engage with the public. So the idea is, we'll show you that up front, and then over the next day and a half, David will explain how we deliver on the promise that we make at this event to the public. Now, I had to watch this presentation dozens of times before I could take it all in. And you might watch, some of you I think have seen it before, but if you're seeing it for the first time, it kind of comes at you like a fire hose. But I just want you to keep this in the back of your mind. What you see tonight, it can be replicated. All right, we have other advisors who give this presentation with success. Now, everybody has his or her own style or tone, and the personal stories might change. But the basic facts, the basic presentation of the SMART process, as we call ours, whatever you call your process, it can be replicated. But it does take time, it does take preparation. You have to be willing to commit to it. When we get together in a restaurant, it's usually the side room, the party room, the back room. Typically we'll have maybe 12 households, usually couples, so 24 or so people. And by the time we get our setup and the tables, the room is full. You want enough people there to make it worth the effort, all the trouble you're going to. But you don't want it too big. We like to keep it intimate. It's a small enough group. We don't use microphones. We just talk to the people when we're there. And so you do want to have that kind of connection. Now, the way we work it is, if you're late, unless we just started, but if we've started, if the train has left the station, we will invite the person or the couple to have a seat in the main dining room. We'll be glad to buy you dinner, and we'll put you first for our next event. But we don't let in latecomers. It's too disruptive. When you're in a small, intimate group and you got people kind of scooching between tables and stuff, and no, that doesn't work. So that's the way that we work it. One other observation, and then we'll get to the actual presentation. And this is about the introducer, about my role. I don't mind telling you that I've been with Retire Smart almost 4 years now. But the first couple of months on the job, after doing some of these events, I said to David, are you sure you want or need me? I'm not a financial person. It's marketing and public relations that I do. I said, sometimes I feel like I'm just getting in the way. But actually, David and the experience of our process have convinced me that there is value to having an introducer. If you can find the right person to tee it up for you, chiefly the advantage is that person can brag about the presenter and the firm, so that the presenter can just be Mr. Humble and just come up and start right in on the content and draw the folks in. Now, I don't know about your markets. I can tell you in Omaha, if the presenter got up and boom, boom, thumping his chest, I'm great and my firm's great, when's dinner coming? I'm done with this person right out of the chute. So it is helpful to have someone, if you can find the right person, have someone who can do a good introduction and tee it up for you. All right, so what I'll do now is I'll sort of step in character here. And let's say the event's at 6:30. When it gets to be 6:25, when we think we have our crowd, I might be floating around, I might be schmoozing, but at some point I'll go to the front of the room and just make an informal preliminary announcement. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to step off. We'll show the intro video that we show. It's short, a minute and a half, but we turn down the lights. It kind of sets the tone. Okay, something special is going on now. And then I'll come up and do my intro, and we'll bring David up, and away we'll go. So folks, we'll begin in just a few moments. We just have a few preliminaries to go over. Get your drink orders in, get your dinner order in. We need to take care of that business so we can start the program. The bathrooms are in the corridor right behind us. But if you can take care of business now, so much the better. There will be a lot of information coming at you over the next hour. So we try to minimize the disruptions and the distractions, which reminds me, if you're like me and you sometimes forget, if you would please silence your phones, we would appreciate that. In your materials, you will find a survey form. Looks like this. It has the SMART acronym down the left side. Please fill that out. during, or after the presentation, and we'll collect those at the end of the program. Now, we're not selling you anything tonight, so say whatever you want, be candid. You get dinner no matter what, and we appreciate your feedback. In fact, there's a box that says, I am not interested. That's fine if you want to check that. There are also some boxes with some possible times if you'd like to schedule a complimentary follow-up appointment and learn more about what the SMART process can do for you. So feel free, but if you would at least fill out the top part, see, that way we can demonstrate to the IRS that we did provide dinner for you this evening. This is, after all, a tax planning presentation. We figure we ought to practice what we preach. So we thank you in advance for at least filling out the top part of the form. That's it for the preliminaries. We'll begin in just a moment.
I'm David Brooks. I'm the president and founder of Retire Smart. I kind of like to reference a quote by someone who makes some pretty good cars, Ferdinand Porsche. I couldn't find the sports car of my dreams, so I decided to build it. We could not find financial planning services that met all of our clients' needs, so we decided to build the right plan for ourselves. We call it a SMART plan, and that's what we do here at Retire Smart, help people retire smart.
The culture at Retire Smart is something that starts at the top. David is not only the greatest financial planner I've ever worked with, but he's also the greatest boss I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
The culture here is amazing. We're almost like a family here. You can tell that no one person feels more important than the other. We all very much work as a team. It's just amazing.
I worked with David and just saw how much of a passion that he has for helping others. His number one mission statement for the company is do the right thing for the right reason at the right time.
We listen to the clients' needs because we want them to know that they are important to us. We want to help them, and we want them to meet their end goal in life. We want them to have fun and enjoy their retirement funds. And you should enjoy your life. Take a vacation. You deserve it.
I kind of warn clients, I'm a hugger, so I'm okay with it. But I think that's what sets us apart. We're able to get down to that level of a relationship where clients feel they can tell us everything so that we can help them make better decisions. And that's critical, frankly, in a true holistic financial plan.
Good evening and welcome to Taxes in Retirement. Thank you for joining us. My name is Chip Maxwell. I do media and public relations at Retire Smart. I am a former county commissioner and state senator. Please don't hold that against me. It gets worse. I've also made mischief hosting talk radio shows. That's how David Brooks and I met. Retire Smart was a sponsor of a weekday morning show that I hosted, and David was a regular guest on our Friday Frenzy. We had a blast discussing everything in the news. Our audience loved it. We consider David part of our team. Now, I'm part of his team at Retire Smart. Retire Smart is an independent financial planning firm. We're located at the Valmont Plaza at 137th and West Dodge Road, right across from Boys Town. If you see, there's a picture of the Valmont Plaza. That walkway is the third floor. We occupy the entire fourth floor in the building to the west, the building to the left. We have a team of about 36 people serving families like yours who have entrusted us with helping them design and build successful retirement plans. David Brooks is a nationally recognized leader in the financial industry. That's why the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fox, NBC, and local media call on David for his analysis. Maybe you've seen him on TV or heard him on the radio, and now he is a published author. Don't just retire, retire smart. It's available at Amazon.com. David's well into his third decade as a financial advisor. This is kind of fun. This is a 2014 edition of Forbes magazine. And the cover says, "The best investment advice of all time." Buffett, Lynch, Graham, titans of the financial industry on the cover. Inside is a full-page feature on David Brooks. Yes, that clean-shaven, baby-faced guy in that picture is the bearded wonder speaking to you tonight. Here's how you know it's the same guy. The headline on the article is, "Relationships come first," which is exactly what you just heard David say in the video that you watched. So that was a decade ago. More recently, well, you've heard of the Fortune 500, right? 500 largest businesses in America. Well, every year, Inc. magazine, I-N-C period, as in incorporated, Inc. magazine puts out the Inc. 5000, the 5,000 fastest growing businesses in America. In each of the last 2 years, Retire Smart has made the Inc. 5000 list. A major reason we're growing is our comprehensive SMART process. It covers all 5 key areas of a successful retirement plan. Those 5 areas are, and you can see them to my left here as well, sources of income, medical and other health expenses, advanced planning, which includes estate and legacy planning, risk management, and tax-efficient strategies. We put the same time and effort into every letter, every element of a SMART plan. But our focus tonight is taxes. This is where Retire Smart saves clients the most money. And yet, it is something too often ignored by financial advisors. David will show you strategies that you are not likely to get anywhere else. And remember, you know this, it's not just how much you make, it's how much you keep. Withdrawing or transferring the right amount of money from the right account at the right time could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes over the course of your retirement. Quick show of hands, if you please. How many of you would like to save $100,000 in taxes? Yeah, the hands start going up before I finish. It's not a trick question. I would. Hey, money saved from the tax man is more money in your hands. In fact, here's what I really want to ask you. Another quick show of hands, if you please. How many of you would like to have David Brooks put $100,000 in your hand tonight? How does that sound? Oh, we got a few people who want in on that action. Well, let's bring him front and center and find out how he plans to deliver on that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host, the founder and president of Retire Smart, David Brooks.
Setting the bar a little high there, Chip.
No pressure, David, no pressure.
So it's my firstborn child's 3rd birthday, and my wife has decided she is going to pull out all the stops. So in the back corner of our yard, we have this gigantic purple bounce house. There's a dinosaur head on it. I'm aging him. That was Barney. He'll be 28. Actually, he just turned 28 last week, all right? But on the left side of the yard, not one, but 2 60-foot slip and slides so the kids can have running, slipping bliss. Not 1, not 2, 3 ponies there for the kids to ride around our very large yard in Central Florida where this took place. The entire fair was catered. Anything you wanted to eat and drink, food and beverage was there for you. I actually owned 4 restaurants at the time this took place. 62 children from the local daycare were invited that he attended, along with my wife's extensive family and friends in Central Florida, which is quite large. More people attended my son's 3rd birthday than came to my wedding. This was an amazing party by anyone's standards. There was only one problem. Dad missed it. You see, I was what most people call the American success story. I started a business, a restaurant. It turned into 2, turned into 3, and turned into 4. I was actually a multimillionaire before I was 25 years old. But it came at a cost. I grew up on a farm, actually, in Northern Virginia, and I learned how to get ahead by my dad. Hustle and grit, you outwork, right? And that's how you get ahead in life. And I believed it, and I did that. But that came at a cost. Success comes at a price. And so when I got home after missing my own son's birthday party at 2:30 in the morning, which is when I often got home, with my wife crying, we were at a life event. We were at a moment in time that we had to really seek some clarity. Now, for you gentlemen in the audience tonight, I want you to understand there's a next phrase. It's really important. I've been married 32 years. Happy wife, happy life. It's very real. So we decided we were going to sell the restaurants and I was going to do something else. That was our decision. Now, the great news is we had a very profitable organization and a business that was still growing and scaling. It wasn't hard to find a buyer, and we actually had a buyer within 90 days. So we signed a contract and sold our business. Now, I'm going to receive a 7-figure check for my work for the last several years. This is the biggest number I've ever seen. And I'm going to have that check in my hands. I've got to figure out, what do I do with it? So I call my financial guy. His name is John Roberts. He was my stockbroker. They didn't use the term financial advisor back then. He actually worked for a company called Payne Weber. Does anybody remember Payne Weber? It's actually one of the original Wall Street Five, been around for 150 years. So I called John up, who I had some money with, but this was more of a trading account. I actually hedged the price of cheese. These were pizza restaurants primarily. I bought $40,000 a week of cheese. So I paid attention to the commodity prices and I learned how to hedge the markets. But I'm like, hey, this isn't my trading account or my hedge account. This is my life's work. I'm going to hand you 7 figures. I need to learn about financial planning. How am I going to make this money last? John said, come on in, we'll put a plan together. So I go in about 2 weeks later, and sure enough, he's put a plan together for me. Pretty little pie chart, all these different colors on this little pie chart. Told me I'm going to be diversified in large cap, small cap, Asia, Europe, etc. And told me I could count on $70,000 to $90,000 in dividends and interest off of my portfolio every year for the rest of my life with the amount of money I was going to invest. Sounded awesome. I said, sign me up. And I handed him the check, basically. Now, very common in that industry, I had to go work for the folks that bought my establishments. I had a 180-day what's called workout contract. 6 months now, I was under the contract to train their management team how to run the operation. 6 months came and went, it flew by. At the end of the 6 months, I was now free from my obligations, and now I've got to figure out, what's my next move? What am I going to do? Now, John, who'd been my broker for about 7 years at this point, I considered a friend. So I asked John for some counsel. Number one, hey, John, I'm done my 6 months. How's my money doing? I want to check. And this is before you could check online every day, by the way. He said, come on in, we'll do a review. 18.5%. We were up 18.5% in 6 months. I'm like, man, life is going to be good. This is awesome. So after looking at the portfolio, I just said, yeah, that sounds good, let it go. I didn't know much about the markets at that point other than just individual commodities and stocks. He had a well-diversified portfolio. I thought I was in pretty good shape. So I asked John some real questions. And again, I thought he was my friend. He was counseling me. I was like, I got to figure out what to do. Cisco Foods, the company that supplies this restaurant we're actually eating in tonight, was my biggest vendor. And they're trying to get me to work for them. I bought about 50 to 100 grand of food a week from them for the last 7 years. And they want me to now go out and counsel their business owners that own small restaurants and show them how to scale, something I'd prove I could do. Problem is, they want to put me on a plane on Monday and come home Friday. That's why I sold the business. I want to be home at night with my children. And frankly, I want to stay married, so I'm going to be home at night. So he goes, well, why don't you just come work here? I'm like, what? He's like, well, you do more research on the commodities and stocks than anybody I've ever seen. You're obviously a natural people person. That's what it takes to succeed in this business. I think I can get you hired in our rookie stockbroker program. I'm like, John, I didn't finish school. I dropped out. When the restaurant took off, I quit college. He goes, they don't really care. If you can pass your Series 7 and you're a client and a referral from a broker, I'm pretty sure about 90% I can get you in our training program. So that's what I did. I signed up and I became a rookie stockbroker 26 years ago at Payne Weber. And by the way, he told me, hey, if you want to finish school, they'll actually pay for it. And I did. So I graduated college 16 years after I started on Payne Weber's dime. By the way, I'm a UCF alum, so I'm sorry, you Husker fans out there. Scott Frost took my team to the promised land. We had our undefeated season in 2017. Now, I'm working my new job and loving life at Payne Weber. The training was amazing. I spent a couple of months in New York, got some fantastic training, and I'm starting to acquire clients. And most of the clients I'm acquiring at this time are successful entrepreneurs. That's who my friends were. And everything was going to plan until the dot-com bubble went pop. And boy, did it go pop. March of 2000 to November that year, the markets lost 41%. That's twice what they went down in 2022. It was brutal. And in 2001, the very next year, the markets finally started to get some legs on them. It looks like things were going to be okay, and some idiots flew planes into the World Trade Center. We had 9/11. And what actually happened was the longest bear market of any of our lives. 3 consecutive years of double-digit losses in the market. 59% of the markets lost from peak to trough. I personally lost over $600,000. It was very tough to take, but I wasn't even 30 years old when it happened to me. So guess what I had on my side? I had time. Many of you may be in a life event tonight. You may be thinking about stepping into retirement. You may be thinking about making a massive change. You've worked hard to accumulate a nest egg. Could you afford to go backwards to that degree? And by the way, the last 3 bear markets have all gone down more than 35%. It's a normal thing for the markets. So as you step into retirement, that's not tonight's discussion. You need to have a discussion about risk on your portfolio. Again, that is not tonight's talk. You're welcome to come to one of our complimentary classes at the Midwest Learning Center if you want to learn more about risk. Now, I want to tell you, the markets started to heal in 2003, and the economy started to come out of the dot-com collapse. But that's when I got a letter in the mail from an organization that doesn't send out happy grams. Black and white, 3 letters. IRS. I opened that letter up, and it told me that from a transaction that was now 5 years in the rearview mirror, I owed $183,000 in taxes, penalties, and interest. The largest move of money in my lifetime was not accurately recorded, and I did not get the best proactive tax advice. So I sought the counsel of a tax attorney, and he told me I had to pay the bill, and the interest was simply clicking each day I waited. So I wrote the check, over $187,000 when I finally paid it. So the market basically cut me in half, and the IRS cut me in half again. So it's been my mission for the last 21 years to understand how our tax code actually works. You see, for you that are about to retire or are already retired, guess what the number one expense on your budget is, and you don't even have it written down? It's a fact. It's taxes. The average American paid 61 different types of tax last year. Some folks pay over 90 different types of tax. Just look on your cell phone bill or your cable bill. You'll find a handful right there. The way we tax folks in this country, and I won't have time to go into all that tonight, is unbelievable. But the problem for baby boomers like you is the older you get, the more boxed in you get because of what we call forced income. You've worked your entire life and you're blessed. You turn on Social Security 1. If you're married, you turn on Social Security 2. Once they're turned on, do you ever turn them off? Of course not. And if you're blessed to have worked for an organization, we work with a lot of teachers and firefighters and police officers, you get a pension. Of course, that check you get every month is what? It's taxable, which now, by the way, makes Social Security taxable as well. And then you save money in these retirement accounts. We were all told to defer our taxes. Anybody here told the myth you should defer taxes, put money away in a 401k, IRA, etc., because taxes will be lower in retirement? Anybody heard that? Folks, that's a myth. 4% of Americans, according to our research, go to lower tax brackets and retire. Most retirees not only don't go to a lower tax bracket, they will actually go up 1 tax bracket. And if you're married, one of you is going to go up at least 2. You need to be prepared for this. So when you get boxed in, can you do anything about it? And the answer is yes, but you have to take action and start planning. Now, I like to talk a lot about taxes, and I go fast, so I want to get a couple of things out of the way early. My dad said, son, you're in sales, basically. Never talk religion and never talk politics. I get that out of the way right up front. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and I vote almost exclusively with my right hand. The only exception is my brother ran as a Democrat. He didn't win, obviously. But anyway, you can think differently than I do, and that is okay. We'll help anybody, but I have a reason for why I vote the way I do and what my convictions are. If your convictions are different, don't let that be the difference between getting good, proactive counsel and advice on the taxes that you don't have to pay. Do you know, according to the American Tax Foundation, the average American in just one tax, income tax, will pay an average of $538,000 in their lifetime. So if you're married, double the number. That's almost $1.1 million in one tax. And if you live in a beautiful state like we do here in Nebraska, we get to pay state income tax on top of that. Then we get to pay property taxes. By the way, anybody sick of their property taxes going up? How would you like to eliminate them? Did you know here in Nebraska, once you're 65, you can legally eliminate your property taxes? But you have to be proactive and plan for that. Now, again, I won't have time to get on it tonight, but if that's a concern, write that down. Now, if you want to learn the tax code, you have to learn to study it. We had some trivia playing before the event started tonight. You might have caught it. But how long have we actually had income tax in this country? Anybody know? We've been a country for 248 years. Yet we've only had income tax for the last 111 years. You see, we started putting income tax in the tax code in 1913. That's when we instituted taxes. For the first 138 years, most prosperous nation on earth, no income tax. How is that possible? Well, I can tell you there's 7 states that run a surplus budget every single year without income tax. I used to live in one of them, Florida. Florida, in fact, 2 years ago, had a $22 billion surplus. That would run the state of Nebraska for 4 years. Surplus without an income tax. You see, if you incentivize behavior, people will follow. Now, you may not like President Trump or former President Trump, whatever we're calling him today. And yes, it's kind of crazy that our 2 candidates are Biden and Trump this year. If you want to hear about the election, you should listen to our show. We talk about them a lot. The reason we talk about politics is it matters. But I don't care about party, and I don't care about the person. What I care about in politics is policy. What policy will that person vote for or introduce in the legislature, whether it's local or national? And then I'm going to figure out what that means for you, my clients, and my constituents. And we're going to proactively plan so that you can pay the least amount of taxes possible. In fact, the Supreme Court says you can do that. Now, in 1913, taxes weren't so complicated. This is what you filed your taxes on in 1913. This is equivalent to what you call a 1040 today. There's no back, by the way. That's it. John D. Rockefeller, Joe Schmo, same piece of paper. The entire tax code in 1913 was 4 pages long. That was it. According to the Tax Foundation, today, the tax code and the federal regulations that go along with it are over 10 million words. But here's the thing. This is Title 26 of the IRC tax code right here. There's 7 volumes to it, and if you have a subscription or a prescription for Ambien, just open this up, start reading. You won't need that prescription anymore. You'll go right to sleep, I promise you. These words aren't very big, by the way. What we've done is we've examined the tax code, and you'd be happy to know there's over 1,700 incentives in the tax code today to help you pay a lower tax liability. Otherwise, we just have a flat tax. We wouldn't have all these deductions, credits, etc. The problem is, who's going to help you decipher or figure out which ones you should do? Now, if there are any accountants or CPAs in the room, I'm not bashing accountants. My little brother's a CPA, and I love him dearly. But most accountants that you're dealing with are what we call tax preparers. They prepare your tax return. So I joke, and we call them historians. They document with dollars and cents what happened last year. They don't really do tax planning. What you need is a proactive tax planner so we can reduce your tax liability, not only this year, but over the rest of your life. And that's what we do at Retire Smart. Now, Chip, he kind of put me in a box there. He set the bar really high. He said, what if I could save you $100,000? And I'm going to show you a couple things tonight. I believe that to be true. But he said, what if I could put $100,000 in your hand tonight? Now, listen, I do not like to be called a liar. I was in the back of the room paying attention, so I watched the very first hand to go up, and it was this young man right here with the glasses. So we're going to put 100 grand in his hand tonight, all right? So congratulations there. Now, the tax code, as we mentioned, is quite complicated, and we need to understand it. The highest tax rate available today is 37%. And the highest income earners earn that. There are actually 7 tax brackets. It's been that way for almost 40 years. But we've had over 24 different tax brackets at a certain time in history. And most people are amazed to find out just how high we can take tax rates. Just so you know, we've taken that number from 37 all the way up to 94%. People ask me all the time, what keeps you up at night, David? It's not left wing, it's not right wing, it's government spending. We are currently $34.5 trillion in debts. This doesn't even include future debts. This is just the current fiscal year, what we owe today. And we're adding $1 trillion to that deficit every 100 days right now. And there's no end in sight for that. And again, politicians on the left and right side of the aisle spend money. Trump spent money. Biden is spending money. We need to elect people that are going to be big boys in the room. I don't know when that's going to happen, but history tells us it does happen. Change comes when we get the pendulum swings too far one way, it will start to swing back the other. But we have to start planning, because unfortunately you are the folks that are going to extract the necessary funding they need, whether it's in your lifetime or when you try to pass assets down to your heirs and beneficiaries. Now, most of you have an idea that you're getting Social Security. Are you supposed to be taxed on Social Security? Do you know you were promised you would never be taxed on Social Security? And now this upsets some Republicans, but guess who made us tax Social Security and Medicare, by the way? Ronald Reagan in 1983. So now 85% of your Social Security has to pay income tax if you have other forms of income. But what if you didn't have any other form of income, at least taxable, but Social Security? You can actually get your Social Security tax-free, but it takes work and it takes planning. Now, we joked about putting 100 grand in someone's hand. Do you know that I can save my average client nearly double that with proactive tax planning? Now, according to the Wharton School of Finance, tax rates, regardless of who gets elected, are going up 40% across the board. This is academia. Ivy League school, really thoroughly diagnosed it, and Stanford University backed it up when they validated the study. The study was produced in December of 2022. But they gave us an option. We don't have to raise taxes 40%. We could cut government spending by 30%. Anybody believe that's possible? Well, unfortunately, I don't really think it is, because the 4 major components, without even calculating interest, eat up over 70% of our budget. So what are we going to do? Well, as a society, we are going to tax the wealthy. Now, the problem is the definition of wealthy is going to quickly start to go downstream. We think of the billionaire's tax. We just heard the current president talk about it at his State of the Union. Wants to put a 25% billionaire's tax on unrealized gains. How do you calculate that? We don't think that'll happen. But all the tax savings I'm going to share with you tonight, and all the tax savings we actually provide for our clients, are not smoke and mirrors. I don't need to project, oh, tax rates will be triple in the future so you can save this money. On current law that is on the books today, we will show you how to save over $200,000 for our average client in real money. So let's talk about how we do that. Now, before we get into that, it's really good if we study history, because those that don't study history are deemed, of course, to repeat it. So some people don't believe me when I talk about the tax rates. So just really briefly, this is the history of our tax code. We started with income tax way back here in 1913. The top rate was 7%. By the way, there was always this thing of pay your fair share. There were 2 other rates, 3 and 5. So low income paid 3%, middle income paid 5%, and the wealthy paid 7%. But very quickly, Congress figured, hey, we can vote changes to these numbers. That's pretty cool. Now, they would need a good reason to do that. Guess what happened in the early 1900s. We joined World War I. Wars are very expensive. Just wait till we see whatever the cost is with Ukraine right now. But post-construction of a war is an economic boom. And it was around the globe. The Roaring '20s weren't just here, it was around the globe. And tax rates were actually able to come down very aggressively. But things got a little out of control. We ended up with the Great Depression, the market crash of 1929. And then FDR instituted what we call the New Deal. And that was our first, what most people call an entitlement program. Social Security was enacted in 1935. How do we pay for that? Because you weren't going to pay for it. There was a 3% payroll tax, 1.5 you, 1.5 the employer. And you were never going to pay tax on what you received. Well, we raised income taxes. That's how we paid for it. We joined World War II, up again. And in 1944, that's when the first time in our history, and the only time until 4 years ago, we ever went past 100% debt to GDP ratio. So we took that top number to 94%. But it took 27 years to put the genie back in the bottle, 3 decades, before we got the top marginal rate really below 90%. And it was a Democratic president that lowered them, JFK. And we went from 90 down to about 70%. And we saw a technological and an economic boom. Now, I was blessed to live for a long time on what's called the Space Coast, east coast of Florida. Cape Canaveral, Melbourne, my son lives there today. And the technological boom was very well felt there. Massive economic impact because of the space race, right? We poured a ton of money in and a lot of innovation. By the way, have you ever written with a gel pen? That's a pen that can write in anti-gravity. We spent $640,000 to develop it. But when you interview the Chinese and Russian cosmonauts, et cetera, and astronauts, they use a number 2 pencil. Government sometimes wastes money, right? Now, from there, we go to Ronald Reagan, who had 2 major legislative acts in 81 and 83 that reduced the top bracket basically from 70 all the way down to 28 and unleashed an economic boom like we've never seen. May never seen again, at least not in our lifetime, we'll see. But for the last 40 years, Bush, Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump, now Biden, it's been minor moves. The last 40 years, they're just barely moving the needle. This dotted line right here, 63.8%. That's the average of the top marginal bracket for the last 111 years. That's the average. With $34.5 trillion and counting, adding $1 trillion every 90 to 100 days, where do you think tax rates are going in the future? Is anybody brave enough to put their hand up they think tax rates will be lower in their lifetime? Anybody think they'll stay the same? How many of you guys think tax rates will go up? I can raise both hands. So you must act, and you must act now. Now, what I want to make sure you understand tonight is not because you guys are of a certain age and demographic. You probably get invited to things like this all the time. I have no idea how you got to Biaggi's tonight. I don't know if we sent you a piece of direct mail or you saw an ad on social media, we emailed you, or you referred from a friend. But you got here because you're in a demographic that probably needs our help. So I want to make sure I put your mind at ease. I think Chip might have mentioned it earlier. I have nothing to sell you tonight. You see at Retire Smart, we operate as what we call a full-time fiduciary. I don't earn commissions on investment security. I don't get paid to sell you mutual funds. It's not how I make a living. If you want to hire a firm, guess what? You're actually going to write a check to pay my firm. But if we don't provide value, you never would. And by the way, we'll give you a money-back guarantee. Now, what I want to make sure you understand tonight is I have nothing to sell you. But if you were to go to someone's presentation and hear about some magic bullet, some silver bullet or magic product that's going to solve your problems, folks, that stuff is BS. Richard, if you don't mind me asking you, sir, why would you invest money in anything? To make money. So there's 3 attributes when you invest money. It's very important you understand all 3. The first of those is growth. We all want to grow our money. The problem, though, is some of us are probably willing to take more risk than others. My wife, Melissa, and I could not be further apart on this equation. In fact, if you listen to the radio show every week, you hear me talk about it all the time. She hates it when I talk about her. But my wife's preferred financial plan, we call that Melissa's mattress money. Take our entire net worth, which has gotten quite large, stuff it on the mattress, and every 5 years, go, oh, it's still there, right? But what's the problem with that? We're not going to keep up with taxes or inflation. My job as a fiduciary, I believe, is to help you get a real rate of return, which means I have to grow your money consistently beating taxes and inflation. That's a real rate of return. So growth is a major component, but there's two other attributes on anything I'm going to put your money in or anything you're going to put your money in. You need to know them all. Now, the second attribute, well, my wife loves that. It's safety. And the reality is the further you run to growth, the further you're going to run away from safety. There's a third attribute, though it is just as important. Liquidity. It's your money. Can you get to it? There are some investments that will actually restrict your access to your own money. Can you believe that? It's a reality. And here's the thing. The further you run to growth, typically the less liquid, the more safe, the less liquid, etc. You cannot have a single investment on the planet today that gives you all three. It does not exist. But here's the cool thing. You can get two of the three in anything you put your money in. So what a fiduciary should do, in my humble opinion, is help you understand you should have money that does all these things, but you need to understand how to allocate it properly. So if you're like me and my wife, we like to have consistent growth and relative safety. I will tell you my single favorite investment, I own a ton of it, talk about it on the radio a lot, it's real estate. There's no better tax asset, by the way, in our Internal Revenue Code. Now, I've been a landlord for over 30 years. That's not for everybody. We get that, but we can show you how to have exposure to real estate if that's important to you. But real estate, now I own commercial and residential personally, but residential properties grow. They double in value every 18.4 years, and I have 140 years of data to back that up. They're relatively safe. Now, are they always safe? No. There's going to be times, maybe in the next 6 months, where real estate goes backwards. I just read an article about condos in Florida having to drop their price by about 10%. It's going to happen. But what real estate is not is liquid. If I want to walk out to the garage of one of my rental properties, I can't just pull 100 grand out. I have to sell the property. 6 months ago or a year ago, I could have sold it in 3 hours when I listed it. Today, it might take me 6-8 weeks, and then I'm having expenses, 6 to 10% in commissions, closing costs, et cetera, to sell it, right? Well, what if you want to have growth and liquidity? Nothing wrong with that. You put it in the stock market, mutual funds, bonds, ETFs, stocks. They're liquid every day, Monday through Friday by 4 o'clock. But are they always safe? Of course not. And here's the reality. Both stocks and bonds can lose money. In 2022, stocks were down over 20%. Bonds were down over 14%. They can both lose double digits in the same year. It can happen. So there's no safety in those. Well, you should have money that's safe and liquid. 2 years ago, I told you put your money in a CD. I used to joke and call that a certificate of disappointment, right? You get 0.4. Today, you can get 4% in that CD, which is great, right? Not if you're retired on Social Security, because you just paid 41% real tax in the state of Nebraska on that 4% interest if you're on Social Security, because you made more Social Security pay tax. That's a problem we can solve for you tomorrow. As a true fiduciary, though, my job is to show you should have money that does this, money that does this, and money that does this. There's a lot of great holistic planning, financial planners right here in Omaha. I have a lot of great friends. Some of them actually taught. But here's the thing that most of them don't get. The next step is you have to learn how to tax allocate these assets. And most people get this completely backwards. Now, I grew up on a farm, so I like to use simple analogies. I call them buckets. As far as the IRS is concerned, there's only 3 tax buckets. The first, which is the most popular, by the way, is simply the tax deferred bucket. What type of account is tax deferred? What do you think? 401k. All right, I heard 401k and IRA. What else? SEP, sure. How about a 403B if you work for a hospital or church or your police or fire? It might be a 457. There's actually 37 different types of accounts that are tax deferred. You're kicking that can down the road till someday. Now, maybe I missed it, but I asked you guys earlier, does anybody believe tax rates will be lower or even the same in the future? I didn't get a single hand in the room, not one. So if you're still working and you're in the room tonight and you're putting money in that bucket, let me ask you a serious question. Why? You're deferring at a tax rate today to take it out at a tax rate that you agree will be higher in the future. Does that sound like logical financial sense? I don't think so. So if you are still working, literally, you probably have online access. It's 2024 after all. Go home tonight and switch. And we'll talk about what that switch is too. Now, the second bucket is what's called the taxable bucket. This bucket, unfortunately, grows a little slower. Why? Because we have to stop and pay the tax man on the growth every year. This could be what type of account? What do you think? It could be a brokerage account. It could be a revocable trust. You could have a joint account or an individual account. You might own a small business. You may own a lot of things, and you get a tattletale letter from the company you've invested with, and they send it to an organization you don't want them to get any mail, the IRS. We talked about their mail earlier. It's called a K-1 or a 1099. Ha ha! You made 0.4 on that CD down at First National. Now you're going to pay. And boy, do you. In reality, only 8% of the average American's net worth is in that bucket because it grows slower. Over 90% is in that first bucket because it's set it and forget it. Most of us sign up at work, the 401k or equivalent, and it comes out of our paycheck. We don't have to think about it. We don't write the check. We don't have to do anything. It's done for us. By the way, it's not a bad thing. Dollar cost averaging can help your return. There's a third bucket, though, that most people don't even play in. And that is my favorite bucket. It's the tax-free bucket. Now, I've taught at 6 colleges and universities across the country. I've taught hundreds of financial advisors. I've been in this business for over a quarter of a century. 10 years ago, literally, I would not get the answer shouted out. But I know you guys are smart enough to tell me. What is the #1 tax-free account utilized in America today? Roth. It's a Roth IRA. It's my favorite account. Coincidence? I don't think so. Here's the thing. It is still the most misunderstood in the tax code by CPAs and financial advisors alike. I hear people all the time, well, I can't have a Roth, David. I'm already retired. I don't have any earned income. It's not what the tax code says. David, I make too much money. I'm not allowed to put money in a Roth. I'm over the income limit for the Roth. I'll just disclose that to you. I put money in my Roth every single year. So does my wife. So do my children. Because they understand the tax code. There's actually 3 different ways to get money in a Roth. We're not going to get that tonight. But a Roth IRA can be your best friend. Now, here's what really blows people away, is it might surprise you. As of a year ago, 89% of all workplace accounts in America, 401k, 403, 457, et cetera, offered a Roth version of the account. Less than 10% of their participants use it. Why? Because we don't teach financial literacy. We don't teach them that tax rates are higher. And by the way, that's under the law. In less than 23 months, tax rates go up. That's what's on the books today. So why not switch, as we talked about, from here to here tonight? When you get home, if you're still working, fix this now. Now, just so you know, there's other things you can do. There's things like LERPs and other tax-free accounts. I won't have time to get in all my favorite tax-free accounts tonight. But the problem is most Americans don't play in this bucket. Now, when you come in to see my team, and it is a team, we have 12 fiduciary-based licensed advisors on our team. And when you come in to see us, for us to help you, by the way, that's the only thing I have to offer you tonight, is a complimentary tax analysis to find out what you might save. And I'm going to show you a couple of strategies really quick here and see what it would do for you. But when you come in to see my team, I'm going to need you to bring your actual tax return, all schedules. I need the actual tax return. I don't need what line 1 is. I need your actual tax return. And I need all your statements, complete statements from each bucket. It's the only way we can do the math. And folks, the math can be turned in your favor. So when you come in to see us, like I said, I like to use buckets. So this is that tax-deferred bucket. All right, so if this red pickle bucket, by the way, which supports firefighters, Firehouse Subs, I love their subs. So I buy these buckets a lot, which is a great donation, by the way, and it's tax deductible. But this represents the tax-deferred accounts that clients bring to us. So after I look at your tax return, you slide across that tax-deferred, 91% of the average American's net worth is in this bucket. So after I look at those statements, and by the way, Uncle Sam, he's smiling on this bucket for a reason. We'll tell you why in just a moment. So the second set of statements I'm going to ask you to pass to me is the taxable. And it's a much smaller bucket if we're looking at the numbers. It's about 8% for the average American's net worth. And then I'm like, do you have any tax-free statements? And if I'm lucky enough for you to even give me a statement, it's less than 1% for the average American. And this is reality. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to stay that way, folks. You see, working with our team, we will show you how to legally, ethically move your buckets around, maybe, so that your tax-deferred bucket could equal your taxable bucket and your tax-free bucket. Because if I get your buckets just to even, we'll save our average client over $200,000. But this doesn't happen overnight. This is a 6 to 8 year process on average. 100 grand in your hand, how about 238,000 in your hand from proper tax planning? Now, we've also seen some unique markets in the last 3 or 4 years. COVID, interest rate hikes, et cetera. The markets were down, both bonds and stocks in 22. They skyrocketed last year, but the whole market really didn't participate. It was 7 stocks. And the Fed is basically saying, we're not gonna have to raise rates, but is inflation coming back? It might be, I don't know. But what happens is the market and the news cycle today creates a lot of volatility. This is my childhood friend, a Slinky. The markets create volatility. So think of that volatility as your portfolio going up and down like this Slinky. Well, I want to tell you, it's a tax planner's dream because we can actually add alpha to your portfolio. We can create additional return by utilizing that volatility. There's a couple of ways we can do this. Let's just go back to January 2020. I own it, and many of you own it, Berkshire Hathaway. Warren's just down the street. We love Warren. Berkshire Hathaway reached an all-time high, January 2020. Let's say this Slinky represents $100,000 in your IRA of baby Bs. Well, COVID hit our shores February 13th at a nursing home out in Washington. And in 5 weeks, Berkshire Hathaway went down 42%. 100 grand was now $58,000. We didn't sit by and just watch. We took action because you can move money from one bucket to the other. So what do? We took your $58,000 of Berkshire Hathaway and did what's called a Roth conversion and moved it to the tax-free bucket. That's a taxable event, folks. But did I pay tax on 100 grand in January or 58? I paid it on 58 because I was paying attention. I reduced your future tax liability guaranteed by 42% right there in one move. And guess what Berkshire Hathaway did? Rebounded last week, again, all-time highs. It's hit 17 all-time highs since, recapturing its old gain. And 100% of that money is available to my clients who did this. They can take it all out, 100%. Say it with me now, tax-free. And by the way, if they don't ever want to sell it, and a lot of folks don't want to sell Berks, we get it. It will pass because it's in the right tax bucket to their children, 100% tax-free. What if you had money in that taxable account? What if this bucket had some money in it? We see this all the time. Clients have stocks and bonds put in their revocable trust. We had a client walk in with about $2.8 million in stocks that Morgan Stanley was managing. Number one energy stock in the world, it's ExxonMobil. So let's just look at that. Same thing. We got ExxonMobil in your revocable trust. When COVID hit, energy really got whacked. ExxonMobil in 6 weeks went back 17 years of gains in 6 weeks, evaporated. We didn't sit idly by. We sold it and booked what's called a tax loss. We harvested that loss on paper. We turned around and the very same day bought Marathon Oil and Chevron Oil with the proceeds. 2 totally different companies. When the oil sector rebounded, which it did, to all-time highs, my clients didn't miss out on any of the gains. But we booked a tax loss. We had a client where we were able to put a paper loss locked in this very trade for $84,000. So we now get to call my client's CPA up and say, I got an $84,000 loss long-term booked. Can I use it or do you need it? How many want your advisor to call your tax preparer with that information fourth quarter every year? Didn't hurt the return, but we were able to harvest a loss. That's called tax loss harvesting. And you can only do it if you're working with a competent, tax-centric, fiduciary-based financial planner. Now, let's rapid fire through a couple of strategies we can help you utilize to maybe save some taxes. Has anybody here ever not sold an asset for the simple reason, I just don't want to pay the tax bill? We hear this all the time. It could be a business. It could be a stock. You might have bought Berkey's back in 1983. It could be a family farm, which is something we deal with all the time. We had just that happen last year. We had a client come in. They actually inherited a 640-acre farm, but they inherited it 27 years ago. The value when they inherited it was $250,000. Well, if you're paying attention to crop prices here, it's a little better across the river there in Iowa. But in Nebraska, we're getting some pretty good money for farms. This farm is now worth a lot more money. It's actually worth $2 million. And here's the problem. They're the third generation that owns it, and their kids would be the fourth. But the kids have already told them, Dad, we don't want it. They have 2 kids, the 2 daughters, and they're just like, we'll sell it immediately. So they tasked me with, David, we don't farm it. We cash rent it out to another farmer locally in the area. Our great-grandfather's the one that started this. Can we sell this? Can you reduce or mitigate the tax liability? And can we replace the income this farmer is currently providing? So ask a couple of questions. How much income are you getting? Well, after taxes and insurance, they were netting out $40,000. Not much. And that's pretty common when you own just land and you're cash renting it, right? We've had some super low commodity prices last decade. But the problem is if we sell this, I have to explain to the client, we're going to pay tax on the gain, and that's $1.75 million. Now, to understand how taxes are paid on an asset like this, we're not going to pay income tax. We're going to pay, at least under current law, that could change under Biden's proposal, which is in your packets tonight, by the way. We're going to pay what's called capital gains tax. And just so you know, currently, that client would have to pay a 20% federal capital gains tax on this transaction. Now, one of 21 taxes that was quietly embedded through the ACA, you may know that as Obamacare, is called net investment tax. That's 3.8%, and the proposal for that is to go up to 5% next year by the White House. 3.8% today, and here in the state of Nebraska, great news, this went down 80 basis points from last year. It's only 5.84. So if we add all this up, we're going to have to pay 29.64% tax on this gain. Just so we know, clear math, that's $519,000 in taxes. So if you sell the farm, you're going to net about $1.5 million, basically, just under that. And then we can certainly replace the 40 grand income with the $1.5 million. It won't be a problem. We have guaranteed interest rates, 4, 5, 6%, depending on how long we want to lock the money up. So that's not a problem, Mr. and Mrs. Client. So like, well, what can we do to reduce the tax liability? Well, just so we know, under Biden's proposed taxes he just put out at his State of the Union, this tax liability would go as high as $793,000, not $519,000. So we may be under some time pressure. I don't know. We don't know what the future holds. So the client tasked me to help them reduce the tax liability. Well, if you're like me, you want to stay in control as much as possible. So one of the tax strategies we decided to enact for this particular client is to keep them in control. CRT. This actually stands for Charitable Remainder Trust. Now, there's many versions of this, but to give you the basics, what happens is we were able to create a new trust account, and we're going to transfer the deed to the asset into this account. So now this trust account owns the farm, my clients don't. Then they sell it. The title company wires the proceeds of $2 million cash to the account. What's the tax liability? Well, this is a charitable remainder trust. So we haven't effectively eliminated the tax, we've basically deferred it. All right? So the charitable account means no taxes due today. Now, there are a lot of rules and a lot of things we have to follow here. I won't have time to get into all the details tonight. But basically, following IRS guidelines, we are now going to turn around and produce income out of this trust account for my clients, what's called the grantor of this trust. The minimum allowed is 5%. You can actually go up to 50%. And we would set this number based on the age of the client and how long they want to receive income. Now, depending on the client's situation, in this example, we actually chose what's called lifetime. My client is 59 years old. She happens to be a surgeon, and her husband's an attorney. He's 58, a little bit younger. So when we transfer this over, we are now going to take a distribution starting the following calendar year of basically $100,000. Is that better than 40? You betcha. But is it taxable? Absolutely. Now, for simple math, we calculated income tax, but in reality, it's actually a combination of the capital gains that got deferred, and income tax based on the age of the client and how long we're going to take this out. Now, the client didn't really need this income. They just wanted to replace the $40,000. So we were able to pay the tax liability, which is about $30,000. We were able to replace the income they wanted to take home, about $40,000, and that left us with $30,000 in income, and we actually put that into another trust called an ILIT. Now, I'm not going to have time to get in that tonight, but you really need to pay attention to this before the end of 2025 on why you may want one of these type of accounts, because of what's called the estate tax. You see, something is placed into an irrevocable trust, you can't take it back. And this is irrevocable life insurance trust. We were able to purchase a special policy using the $30,000 that was available on the husband and wife that was 59 and 58, and it actually bought us $3.6 million in absolutely guaranteed death benefit once the second spouse has passed. I need both heartbeats to stop for it to pay out. So it makes the insurance actually cheaper. Whether they both passed away, unfortunately, in a car accident in 2 months, 2 years, or 25 years from now, now the children, their 2 daughters, will receive this trust, a $3.6 million inheritance tax, estate tax, income tax, and capital gains tax free, no matter what. My client has replaced the $40,000 in income they were receiving that was taxable anyway. And guess what I've done? I've wiped out $519,000 in capital gains tax. But guess what happened? We also got a charitable gift when we made the gift. Because you see, what remains in this trust when my clients pass away will go to charities that my clients get to choose. So as long as they choose a legal charity, what remains in this account will go to those charities. And for that gift, they get a portion of the asset gifted to the trust. And in this example, they actually got a 40% valuation on the gift. So they got $800,000 of reduced adjusted gross income. And if they couldn't use it up in 1 year, we actually have 6 years to use that up. That's an additional $343,000 in income tax savings on top of the $519,000. So my client saved $850,000 in taxes. The kids are now guaranteed to basically get net double the inheritance they would get today, and my client gets the income for life. That is what tax planning can do. Now, it's complicated, and I went fast, and I get it. There's a little bit of dotting the I's and crossing the T's we'd have to go through with you, but we'll get there. Let me give you another strategy. Let's talk about somebody that walks in our office every single day. Let me tell you about Bob and Mary. Bob and Mary have been happily married for 50 plus years. 75 years old, have done everything right, at least as what they were told to do. Bought a house, paid off the mortgage, raised their 5 kids, sent them on. Bob actually worked in a vocational career. He was a school teacher, right, and loved what he did. Bob, because he worked as a school teacher all those years in Omaha Public Schools, one of the few that still has real pensions still available. Bob has been retired for a while now. He's getting a pension right now of $48,000 a year. Now, Bob, of course, also gets to have income from Social Security, and that has just grown to $38,000 in income. Now, Mary, who raised their 5 children, volunteered at the Catholic school down the street from them at the church, but Mary never really held down much of real employment in her working career, very common in Mary's generation. Does Mary qualify for Social Security? The answer is yes. If you've been married for 10 years, you get what's called a spousal benefit. So she's basically collecting half of Bob's benefit. Now, Bob, because he did what everybody told him to do, started putting money in the 403B. Just matched, got a 3% match along the way. When he retired, that 403B rolled over to what's called an IRA. Balance on that IRA today, because he doesn't need it, it's $850,000. But because Bob is 75, what does he have to do with this account every year? He has to take an RMD, or a required minimum distribution. Just so you know, that's $34,550 if that was, you were 75 and that was your balance at the end of last year. So what does that look like from an income standpoint and a tax standpoint? Well, if we add that up, let's see here, that's 8, that's 16 and 9, so that's 23, 27, right? So we got about 137 or so, 139,000 in income there. How are they going to be taxed? Well, you have to go to our tax code, which is around here somewhere. And these are in your packets, by the way. So here's our tax code for this year, 2024. Now, the biggest change, just so you know, under Trump's tax cuts is actually down here. Standard deduction, basically doubled, right? So Bob and Mary are a married couple, so they get to take $29,200 right off their income. No receipts, no tithing, no mortgage interest. We don't need anything. We get to knock $29,200 off. And if you're over 65, you get an additional exemption. And if you're married, basically we're going to be able to knock off about another $3,000. They actually get to knock off over $32,000 off of that. So their taxable income, about $105,000. Well, how do they get taxed? Well, you would go to married filing jointly. Let's see, they're above $94,000, below 120 or 200. So they are in the 22% tax bracket. It's the most common bracket we see in our office for dual income families here in Omaha. Now, just so you know, 22 in less than 2 years is 25. That's the law. But do they pay 22% on the 105 or so? No, we have a progressive tax system. You see, they only have to pay 10% on that first 23,000. Their actual tax liability this year, it's $11,833 in taxes. On almost $140,000, that's not so bad. It's a single-digit effective rate. You should know your effective rate in your tax code. But you see what Trump's tax code didn't fix, what Biden's proposals, which are in your portfolios tonight, won't fix, is what if something happens to Bob or Mary? Sorry, guys, we're going to knock Bob off. We go first. Now, people always ask, why do men die so much earlier? I've been married 32 years. It's a very simple answer. It's because we want to. I'm just kidding, wife. Happy wife, happy life, I meant it. But the reality is actually men die about 5.8 years earlier than our counterparts. So let's just say, unfortunately, at Christmas last year, Mary finally gave Bob the gift he's been waiting for. You're so excited, his ticker gave out on Christmas Day. Bob had a heart attack, is no longer here. After the holidays and Mary grieving with the children, the reality sets in. Let me ask you a question. What income is Mary going to lose? Now, I didn't tell you, Bob took a lower pension when he retired. He wanted to make sure Mary was going to be covered. He chose 100% survivor benefits, so she gets to keep the pension. It's great news here. But what other income might she lose? She's going to lose the lower Social Security. You get to keep the larger one, and here's good news for those of you that might be in second marriages. You only have to be married a year for this to apply. So how's it look for Mary under our current setup? Well, walking into this year, now Mary has a $48,000 pension. She has Social Security of $38,000, but his IRA is now her IRA. So she still has to take an RMD. So if we just put the $34,000 RMD on there, let's take a look there. That looks like that's about $110,000. Now, according to AARP, a surviving spouse can live on about 27% less income because they're not paying for food, clothing, or health care. So under those numbers, Mary should be fine. But how does the tax code treat Mary? Well, let's go back to the tax code. It's 2024. If he passed away last Christmas, how's Mary going to file this year? She's going to file as a single. Standard deduction, less than $15,000. She'll get an extra $1,500 or $1,800. So she's going to get to knock off about $16,000 now in her standard deduction. So now Mary's got about $94,000 in taxable income. Now we have to go, unfortunately, to the single filer tax code. Well, let's see, above 47, below 100, she's now in the 22% tax bracket. And in just 2 years, less than 2 years, that goes to 25%. If this were 2026, Mary's tax liability on this exact income, $20,699. They're paying $11,000 together. Is that fair? No. Can I fix it? Listen, I fancy myself a pretty good tax planner, but even I can't fix it after Bob's gone. But lucky for you, I drove to Biaggi's tonight in a silver DeLorean. And if you get in with me and I get that sucker up to 88 miles an hour, I can actually go back in time. So I'm going to do that for you real fast. Let's take Bob and Mary back in time. Now, some of us will have less weight on us, who knows? We might look a little better, lower waistlines, but let's say we go back 15 years. Now, Bob and Mary are 60 years old, and they walk in my office, and people walk in all the time. Dave, we've got this money saved up. We'll just say it's the same thing. There's $850,000 in the IRA. Everything else same. We got pension income. We're good. We don't need anything. We've paid off our debts, Dave. Just grow this for us and make us only touch it when we have to because we don't want to pay taxes. We'd like to leave it to our kids. And I say, Bob, that's not a good idea. Let me explain to you why. Now, Bob, I have to make some assumptions. We know that can be dangerous, so forgive me here. But if I invest that for you, and let's just say we get a 6% rate of return on these dollars, and now we kick this can down the road, because you're 60 today, under new legislative changes, you don't have to take an RMD, which most people think is great news. I would argue that. You don't take an RMD till you're 75. But if we get 6% on that money, $850,000, that's $2,056,000 in the future. And now, Bob, your first RMD, are you ready for this, Bob? It's $82,000 you'll be forced to take out of that account in the future. And every year that number is going to get larger and larger and larger. Now, I use one of my favorite movies there. I love Michael J. Fox. So I'm going to tell you about my wife's favorite movie. Bob and Mary have had a wonderful, long retirement. They're coming up on their 90th birthday, and Bob and Mary, wouldn't you know it, have the same birthday. Now, Mary's struggling to remember some of the things of their life, so Bob reads this diary back to her to help her remember things. There's some pink swans in the lake. I believe this assisted living facilities in South Carolina where they're living. And yes, ladies, I have to admit, I've watched it more than I want to tell you, and we're talking about The Notebook. Bob and Mary passed away happily together on their 90th birthday. What does that look like from a tax standpoint? They both lived a long, fruitful retirement. Well, I will tell you there's great news. They actually pulled out $1.24 million in income on those RMDs, which is how they funded that beautiful facility they lived in. And here's the great news. Because it grew at 6% a year, by the way, there's no such thing as linear returns, but if it did, it grew at 6% every year, there's actually $2,071,000 still in the account when they're 90. But how much of that do the kids get to keep? You see, stretch IRAs, we all used to be familiar with them. When our parents passed away, we got to stretch out over a lifetime. It's gone. It doesn't exist. Your kids now have to force distribution over 10 years. And once you've started an RMD, which they have, you can never turn an RMD off. That is the law. So now your kids are going to be required to take about $230,000 a year in taxable income out of this account every year. When they're in their peak earning years themselves, early 60s. At the peak of their career, they're probably earning the most income they've ever earned, and you're going to add another $250,000 in taxable income on top. What tax bracket are they going to be in? But let's not worry about that. Let's just talk about the taxes just paid on the distribution. Under the absolute best scenario possible, your kids would walk away with $1.3 million net, and there would have been over $989,000 in taxes paid on your RMDs and what your kids had to pay. It's the best planning possible at that scenario. But it doesn't have to be that way. So I say, Bob, let me tell you about my favorite account. He goes, oh, I think I remember talking about on the radio, David. It's a Roth IRA. That's right. He goes, David, I want to tell you already, I'm not allowed to have a Roth IRA. I'm retired. I'm like, Bob, let's go to the IRS website and prove you wrong, all right? So we're going to open up Bob a Roth IRA. I said, Bob, we're not going to make a contribution. That's what you're thinking about. You need earned income to make a contribution. We're going to talk about something called a conversion. Bob, you probably remember, I don't like the IRS that much. I'm not fond about it. I talk about it a lot. So let's take the IRS and flip those letters around. SRI. Actually have a federal trademark on that. It's called Strategic Roth Integration. I want to show you how to efficiently, if you remember earlier in the presentation, move money from one bucket to the other bucket legally and pay the minimum tax possible. And through our proprietary software, we're going to show you just how to do that. Now, based on Bob and Mary's income, before we knocked Bob off, guess what we had? Bob and Mary were in the 22% tax bracket. And because they are not yet IRMA age, they're 60 years old, I don't have to worry about things called Medicare penalties. Again, another tax you may not be aware of we can talk about. So we calculated that we could move over $250,000 out of Bob's IRA and basically pay 23%, 1 cent more than his current tax bracket effective rate. Because the next bracket, folks, is just, it's right there on the bracket you have in your packet, it's 2 cents more. And we were able to move $250,000 out of his IRA and put it in his Roth. Now, is that a taxable event? You betcha, the day we do it. So we actually had to pay the tax bill. In this example, it was actually $57,000 and change. So we're going to deposit $192,500 in his Roth. The tax man has been paid out of the transfer. Now, we'd love for you to write the check so all the money goes in the Roth. But we understand not everybody has that ability. But it's okay. The tax man has now been paid. We took care of it for you. If we invest this money in the same investment we put the IRA through and got the same 6% rate of return, over the next 6 years, I was able to deplete Bob and Mary's IRA and not hit a single IRMA penalty. So we added money to it every year. Very different scenario now when they're 90 years old. Bob and Mary were able to take tax-free distributions out of their IRA, totaling the exact same $1.24 million. This time it was tax-free to enjoy the fruits of their labor in their retirement. And their kids now are going to inherit $2,586,300, 100% tax-free versus $1.3 million. Is this the missing piece of your holistic financial plan? Would you like to know what is possible with an actual tax analysis from a holistic planning shop? There's no obligation ever, but that's all we have to offer. Folks, you can tell I get pretty passionate about this stuff. I could go on until breakfast, but Robin's ready with the salads and wants to come in here in a moment. If you do me a favor and grab this form out of your packets, I would really appreciate it. Chip asked you earlier to fill that out because, yes, I know what it's like to be audited. I've done it not once, but twice in my life. Because we write a lot of stuff off. Now, what I want you to do is just think for a moment. We focused on our SMART plan on T tonight, tax-efficient strategies. There's some numbers here. It's 1 through 10. I want you to grade yourself. Just think about what I shared tonight. You already knew all this. You're an 8, 9, or 10. You're in great shape. No 7s allowed, by the way. 1, 2, or 3, this was all new to you. Just evaluate yourself. 4, 5, or 6, you probably are doing some proactive tax management. Maybe you own ETFs over mutual funds, or you own a few municipal bonds in your taxable account, and you think that's good tax planning. Just rate yourself 1 through 10. Now, I'm going to ask you to actually go through the other 4 areas of a holistic financial plan and rate yourself there as well. And let me tell you, if you've got every number 8, 9, or 10 or above, you're in great shape. But if you have a bunch of 1, 2s, or 3s, or 4, 5s, and 6, you may want to get some counseling and help. So all I ask you is, if it makes sense to you to schedule time on our calendar, my team has made available some appointments that are available over the next 10 days. It's a complimentary consultation. You let us know if that makes sense to you. If you unfortunately don't have your calendar with you tonight and you're just not sure you can commit to a specific time, there's a box to check for a future time. That's okay. If you're just here because you want a great steak and a good meal and you want to get the information and you're not interested at all, that is acceptable as well. There's a box to actually check for that. Not interested. Folks, I know you get to go to a lot of events like this. I hope this was a little different than what you thought you were coming to tonight. Did you learn anything? Was this valuable? Listen, I look forward to seeing you in the office. We're just across the street from Biaggi's. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. And we got dinner. All right, here's the thing, though. I'm going to ask you real quick. On your evaluation form, for real, on the blank lines, I want you to write down what you want to get out of this event over the next 48 hours. Write it down. Just leave them on the table. We'll collect them. And then we're just right out here, right? And then head out here. And then tomorrow there'll be about 3 different Q&A sessions where you can ask me anything you want. Was this good so far? Worth the time coming? All right. Bourbon up.